my lovely bookish friends, and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to be sharing with you some standalone fantasy books which are great for when you just can't commit to a series. I personally love standalone books because they're just fun, you can get into them and have the whole story just there for you to read, you know, not have to wait for the sequels to come out. So let us get to the book. First we have Dragonfly by Julia Golding. This story follows a prince and a princess from different kingdoms, hers being pretty strict in regards to customs and traditions, and his being kind of more the usual medieval fantasy world vibes, who are forced into a political betrothal as there is this other kingdom who is threatening war. They don't really get along and they are very different, but for the sake of the kingdoms they're willing to go through with it. However, before the engagement can be officially agreed, the pair are kidnapped and the story goes from there. This is one of my favourite books of all time. I read this so many times growing up and I still adore it now. The characters are delightful, the world building is really well done, especially for her country, and the story is just excellent. It's one of those middle grade books that could quite easily be pushed up into young adult as it gets a bit dark at times, but they get away with it by being more suggestive about these dark bits than in your face, and I just love it. I just love it so much. So if you haven't read it, I really encourage you to go and check it out. Next up we have The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. This is a retelling of a Korean legend and follows Minna, who takes place of her brother's beloved and sacrifices herself to be the bride of the sleeping sea god, and then everything kicks off from there. I read this book in one sitting, I absolutely loved it. It's kind of like Spirited Away meets a K-drama, two of my favourite things in one, and it's just such an easy, fun, magical read, and it is very YA fantasy and the love story does move a bit quick, but I just loved it. Next up we have The Will and the Wilds. This tells the story of Enna, who lives in a house close to the wild woods, which is full of mistings, which are kind of like fae and monsters mixed together. When one of them tries to kill her to obtain an enchanted stone, Enna takes a big risk to fight a misting with one of their own. So she enters into a deal with a misting, but the price is a kiss that will steal her soul. This book is super quick and easy to read. The first time I read this I did so in one sitting, as it's just wonderfully whimsical story which is perhaps a bit formulaic in places, but its narrative just works really well and I really enjoyed it. Moving on we have A Far Wilder Magic. This tells the story of Maggie, who spots this mystical fox in the woods near her home. Whenever this fox shows up, a hunt soon follows and there is a big prize for whoever can kill the fox. However, to enter this hunt you need a shooter and an alchemist. So Maggie teams up with Wes, who is this apprentice alchemist who has essentially been fired from all his apprenticeships, and things go off from there. This book is actually a great one to read in autumn as it gives off some really great autumnal vibes, and well, personally I found this book a little slow at times, but I did really like the concept and the characters grew on me as things went along. If you've been with this channel for a while, then this next book will come as no surprise. It is The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd-Jones. Yes, I'm talking about it again. It has been a while, to be fair. Anyway, this follows our axe-swinging heroine Rin, who is a gravedigger and who protects her town from the bone houses, which are like walking skeletons. When these bone houses start to attack her town, Rin and a new rival set off on a quest to find a magical cauldron that will put a stop to the madness. That description doesn't really do this book justice, but we'll just leave it at that. I really enjoyed this book. I particularly enjoyed the writing style, which reads very much like a dark fairy tale. The characters are wonderful, especially Rin, who manages to be a strong female lead without falling into the usual YA tropes of a strong female lead. It's just such a fun book. If you like this kind of thing, go check it out. It's just so much fun. This next book is one that I really enjoyed, however I feel like I haven't actually properly spoken about it before, because I know I actually forgot this when it should have been on my favourites of 2022 list, but I actually forgot it, so it's not in that video. Anyway, this is Jade Fire Gold, and I'm just going to read you the blurb of this one because it kind of sums up everything really well, and it goes: Her destiny, his revenge. In an empire on the brink of war, Anne is no one. with no past and no family. Altar is a lost heir, his future stolen away as a child. When they meet, he sees her as a path to reclaiming the throne, and she sees a way to finally unlock her past and understand her lethal magic abilities. But they may have to pay a far deadlier price than either of them could have imagined. This book is, it's just so good. It's a Chinese-inspired fantasy world with magic and all kinds of exciting stuff going on, and it also gives off Avatar and the Last Airbender vibes, only think of it as if it was Zuko and Katara. And if that doesn't want to make you go read it, I really don't know what else will. You know, it's just good fun, it's a standalone, however, the ending it sort of leaves it in a place where the author could write more if she wanted to. The next 3 books are all from the same author, Margaret Rogerson, who so far has only published YA fantasy standalones, all of which are great. And we're just going to go in the order of which they were published, starting with An Enchantment of Ravens, which follows Isabel, who is this artist with a dangerous set of clients, the fair folk, whose realm borders her village. They crave human craft with a terrible thirst, and Isabel's paintings are highly prized. But when she receives her first royal patron, Rook, the Autumn Prince, she makes a terrible mistake. She paints human emotion in Rook's eyes, and because of this, Rook essentially kidnaps her so he can explain this situation to his court. But on the way, things go horribly wrong as stuff isn't quite right in his world, and their journey becomes more dangerous than either of them could have imagined. This is another book that is really good to read in autumn, as it is full of autumnal vibes. It's short and just nice and a whimsical story. I will say that the love line is a bit quick, especially because there is a length of time in where these 2 main characters are together, which we as the readers don't see. Which makes sense in terms of the pacing of the overall story, but it means that we miss part of their kind of getting to know each other love line part. So you kind of just have to take the love story bit as a bit like a fairy tale kind of vibes. The next book is one that I've talked about a lot, and it is one of my favourite books of all time, Sorcery of Thorns. This follows Elizabeth, who was raised in one of the great libraries, a place filled with magical grimoires. When one of the library's most dangerous grimoires is released, Elizabeth is blamed. With no one to turn to but her sworn enemy, the sorcerer Nathaniel Thorn, she finds herself entangled in a centuries-old conspiracy. This book is just, it's so good, I just love it, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's magic, libraries, a demon cat butler, magic books, a Howlite main lead, and just swords. All the things that I love and thrown into one. So if you're looking for good magical fun, this is the book to read. Then lastly for this author, we have Vespatine. This is about our main girl, whose name I cannot pronounce, who is training to be a Grey Sister, who is a nun who deals with the dead and the spirits of the undead. When her convent is attacked, she awakens a Revenant? I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm sorry. This ancient spirit. And with its power, she sets off to try and save her people from an ancient evil, so long as this spirit doesn't betray her first. This book is so much fun, and I think somewhat underrated compared to the other 2 by this author. Our main girl is just kind of antisocial and socially awkward, and I just relate and love her so much for it. I will say that this isn't a romance. She is training to be a nun, and this is not something that she just throws off when she meets the rather complicated male lead. It's kind of more of an enemies to friends kind of storyline, which I'm all up for, and I kind of hope to see more in future books, as I feel like the friendship trope like that isn't really done enough, and I just love it. On to our final 2 books, and we have Stardust by Neil Gaiman. Again, I'm just going to read the blurb for this one. At the dawn of the Victorian era, life moves leisurely in the sleepy village of Wall. Young Tristan Vaughan has lost his heart to the beautiful Victoria Forrester, and to win her love vows to bring her a star they see falling from the sky. It is an oath that sends him over the town's ancient wall and into a mysterious land of fairy, a world that is dangerous and strange beyond imagining. I am currently reading this book and loving it. It's so much fun, and Neil Gaiman has just such an excellent writing style. And even though it's short, the world building is great and he develops the storyline in a really enjoyable way. I also love the film version of this book, which is different, but they are both just whimsically good fun. Finally, we have the Night Circus, and the synopsis goes as follows. The circus arrives without warning. No announcement precedes it, it's simply there when yesterday it was not. The black sign painted in white letters that hangs upon the gates reads, "Open at nightfall, closes at dawn." As the sun disappears beyond the horizon and all the tent's small lights begin to flicker, as though the entire circus is covered in particularly bright fireflies. When the tents are all aglow and sparkling against the night sky, the sign appears. The Circus of Dreams. Now the circus is open, now you may enter. This book is so good, it's very magical and unexpectedly very romantic. I didn't realise the love story was going to be so lovely and I ended up really rooting for them. It was beautifully written and has some wonderful prose, and I just loved how all the storylines weave together. I also have a reading blog for this one, which I'll link above, and yeah, it's just a really delightful story. And that was it. That was all the books on this standalone fantasy recommendations list. I hope that you found some good ones on there, maybe some new ones to add to your TBR. If you have any other recommendations, please put them in the comments below. I love finding new books in the comments, but also I personally really like standalones, and I do actually have more, and I feel like later in the year I might do a part 2 for this video because I just really like standalone fantasy books. I just like how it has the whole story just there for you to read, not having to wait for sequels, and sometimes that is just what you want, because obviously it's great when you can get invested in a story and you can read multiple books with the same characters, but sometimes it is great just to have the story right there for you, that you've got nothing that you have to wait for. And so yeah, I really hope that you found a book on there to like. Probably the one I recommend most, even though it is a middle grade book, is definitely Dragonfly, because this is one of my all-time favourite books growing up and I still absolutely adore it now. So that brings us, oh, let me get that back in the shelf. So that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing, as I have a lot more bookish content to come. So until next time, my lovely bookish friends, bye!